afternoon, good morning, or whenever you happen to be listening to this. Welcome to the Film Realist Podcast, the film and TV podcast from a complete nobody that's hopefully for somebody. Now, I know every time I say that, the guest of this episode reacts in a very positive way, so I'm not going to waste any more time with that. Rob Keys, special recurring man of the internet, is back. We're talking about a lot of things today. Rob, thank you for coming back to the show.
Happy Canadian Thanksgiving to us.
It's the
Am I
real
dating
one.
ourselves if I say that? It was
No,
just
it's fine.
out of sync.
Well, no, we could just say Happy Thanksgiving, and then the episode works now, and then in a month and a half,
We'll drop it in November. Yeah.
exactly when our friends to the south celebrate their Thanksgiving. You know what? As a Canadian Thanksgiving or whatever, as the Thanksgiving that we celebrate, I'm glad it is as far away from other stuff. Like in 3 weeks, we have
Totally.
Halloween, and then November we do have like the Black Friday and Cyber Mondays and whatever. I guess Remembrance Day's in there too. But then having the lead up, if you do celebrate Christmas or Hanukkah, you get a gap of that. It's not like immediately burning into another holiday. So I'm
It's
calling
well
it the
spaced
real
out.
Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's the
I'm
one
with you.
we're celebrating right now. And so we're going to be talking about a substantial amount of content because, as Rob knows, I've been coming off of a concussion recovery, so I've been hit or miss with content. So apologies, Jermaine. I will be reviewing The Creator with Rob today, as well as talking about Ahsoka Season 1 and the first episode of Loki. And then at the end of the episode, I'm going to make you wait, Jermaine. I will talk about my 5 favorite science fiction films of this century so far. All right, Rob, you are the guest. What do you want to talk about first?
My first question for you is, where
Yes.
did you get that Ahsoka poster behind you? I like that.
This was sent to me courtesy of Disney Studios. So thank you, Disney, for sending me this
Awesome.
poster.
Very cool.
Yes. I have a Loki one. It's trapped in my mailbox. Because this was federal holiday, I can't put it up. So it'll hopefully be up
Oh,
for the end of the show.
where where'd that one come from? Is that an order or is that from Disney as well?
Disney as well.
Sweet. Cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't really seen many Disney Plus posters, so it's not like in
No,
print. I mean,
it's
so.
it's only through Disney to like it's one of the things that bothers me is though it's a limited redemption thing. So this one's really cool, but the one that I did have, I lost, which was just her face, which was really cool, especially when you know the symbolism that connects to the last season
Mm.
of Clone Wars in particular. Well, you know, we're talking about Ahsoka. Why don't we just
Yeah.
talk about Ahsoka? Where's your Ahsoka tendrils? Because I know you have them. Are they there?
Oh, actually, it's a touchy subject in this household. My wife
Oh
immediately
no.
put that for donations after my kids had a day with it. But all the other Ahsoka toys, I've hidden away as stash, like as I do with my boxes everywhere.
Yes.
So, but the tendrils, which are pretty pricey, they're like $50 or $60,
Wow.
and they make sounds too. It has all the
That's so cool.
lines. Yeah, it's gone. But I do have, I don't know where it is, Ahsoka Mickey Mouse ears from Disney World.
Oh, there you
So,
go.
of
Perfect.
course, they're theming up all of Galaxy's Edge for Ahsoka,
Mhm.
right? So,
Yep.
I did get that when I went to the Destination D23 event, which was cool. So, should have brought that. I will.
Yeah, what's done is done. I think you guys covered your general opinions of it on Podcast X.
Hmm.
So, which again, I never listened to those until afterwards, so I've just been delaying with certain things. So I don't actually know how you feel about the show. We've talked about it briefly, but um how did you feel in general about well, I mean, assuming it's season 1 or potential again, full spoilers for most of these things. There will be notes listed in the show notes. So if we're talking about Ahsoka, we're talking about the whole show. In The Creator, we'll talk about the whole movie. I know that's not typical. I apologize, but there's a lot of stuff to get through. And then if you did not watch episode 1 of Loki, full spoilers for that as well. All right, season 1 or part of the Heir to the Empire plot. What'd you think of it so far?
Yeah. I full disclaimer. I have been doing a 2 or 3 episodes of a Fused Film podcast with my boys Kevin and Baxter, who I go 10, 15 years back, talking about Ahsoka. And I've done some episodes here and there, and I feel like I come across so negative. And then once you listen to what, like, really negative, like, I'm generally pretty strict, and you know what I mean. I'm very I'm ruthless with a scalpel when it comes to my thoughts on Disney Plus programming and these IP, but especially Disney Plus programming. And then Podcast X, well, I'm very curious if you have a chance to listen to it in the coming weeks. Like we talk, like we've been off for weeks, 6 weeks. So I was forcing my co-host Ben and Kofi to go through every single thing. Like even we talked about Expendables and Saw for like a Paw Patrol 2, everything.
No,
One
okay,
Piece.
we have actually. I'm putting a break right now because we have not had a chance to talk about this yet. So there will be an end note right here. You claimed that Paw Patrol: The Mighty Pups was the best Justice League movie.
Yeah,
I
inside that I've seen in theaters.
I adamantly disagree. I think that script is worse than the theatrical cut of Justice League. I was
Of Paw Patrol
so
2?
yes.
Oh, I don't even care. Do you want to know why? Because oh man, we're getting into it here. In the second act, we get to see all the pups share a single gem of power, and you work as a team. It's just a really fun, beautiful sequence, and it's the only time in the movie where it was basically 7 plus 3 pups this time around. It's very strange,
Yeah.
where they
They're the
all get to use their
Grogu's.
powers,
They
and
get
it's the
3
only times.
Grogu's.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, exactly. Like actually, and then there's the only time Zuma gets to this kind of be the hero of the sequence because he starts the sequence and at the end he's the one that's just like with his powers was able to take down the villain and get all the gems back. I thought that was a cool
Can we
sequence.
talk about Zuma
And
for a minute?
wait. Yes, we can. Wait. I'm not done yet. And the ending, the whole sky like becomes Supergirl thing is like such a beautiful scene. It's so well done, and despite missing some beats in the first 2 acts and having not enough pups for me, I think that was such a beautiful tear-jerking moment and so well executed, and I love that ending. Despite my feelings about the sequel jumping into the super heroics so early in the franchise, but I thought that the first acts I was with you. I didn't love it, but the second half of the movie I thought made up for it. So that's what
I
I.
found every decision of it. And so I took Melody to it. I had seen your tweet. She was looking forward to it. I'm like, okay, again, she loved it. And I typically would feel like I'm more critical of films aimed at children because the bar for how good they can be is so high. And like I wouldn't say the effort was minimal, but it seemed like every decision was probably the first idea. And here's why I think that. You're sitting around, and again, Paw Patrol is not a show that I've kept up with at all. They're
Mm.
like, okay, we've got what's Chase gonna do? I don't know. He's gonna be super fast, and they're just sort of deciding what their powers are gonna be in the writing phase. Here's what I couldn't get. As soon as this happened, I was like, no, Marshall, the firefighter, gets fire powers. So
Yeah.
the character who puts out fires becomes an arsonist. Shouldn't he get water powers to put out said fires and then just make Zuma like Aquaman and can like do something else?
What? Two
But
water pups? No. Get out of
no,
here.
but that's what I'm saying. Like Marshall gets fire powers.
Well,
No,
look, I'm gonna blow your mind here. Guess what powers Everest gets in the show?
I don't know.
She's the ice pup. She shoots
Yeah.
ice. She's Iceman.
Okay, but that's different. Some of them is a service, like Marshall is a serviceman. He's like he has a job to put out fires.
Emergency responder. He's got to get there
Yeah,
fast.
but
That's why he's fast.
how does Marshall's fire power help him do his job?
Well, his
And
job in this case is taking out a
yeah,
mad scientist, so
I
it's
guess so.
somewhat effective. Or a giant humdinger. Spoiler.
Yeah,
So,
whose clothes?
when you play with the fire pup, you're gonna get burned. What a great line! Anyways, I don't understand your complaints at all because all of this is in the show, and you have to accept that these are the same pups that went inside of a mountain and found a hidden dinosaur kingdom and a pup named Rex who could talk to dinosaurs. So you got to back up, my man.
All right.
All the main pups have the powers from the show. The
Okay.
exception being Liberty, who's new for the movie. So the kind of that's why the mystery is like the second act reveals like what is her power going to be.
Oh,
And it's
I
that-
knew I was clocking it as stretchy powers as soon as
Really?
she didn't get any. Oh yeah.
I had no idea.
There's
I
so
actually,
much dialogue where there's like you need to like I'm trying to make one up, but it's like you need to like be able to like stretch and try and do new things. I'm like, oh my god, it's gonna get.
They actually
so
say that?
embarrassed.
I didn't
Oh
catch
yeah,
that.
oh yeah. You
didn't
need to
catch
be able
that.
to. You're too like stiff and rigid. Like you need to be able to do.
What?
It's all there, man. It's hilarious. Anyways, I don't want to
That's
spend too
funny.
much time on this. If kids enjoyed it, at the end of the day, that's all that matters. So
Look, honestly, it is. I think the first movie, and we've talked about this before, the first Paw Patrol pups was, to me, so much better than it deserved to be because the show
Mhm.
is very whatever. It's like the most extreme version of like let's sell toys. It's a Spin Master production, a toy company, um, and the filmmakers are not shy about that, right? And you can tell even in
Mhm.
this movie, they introduce a whole new set of vehicles for them without any context or explanation. They're just new
Fair.
vehicles that work
Yep.
with their powers, just not even a mention of where or how they came from. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Have they been there the whole time, ready for the comet to land? I have no idea. But so that was a failing for me. But the
I
first
didn't
movie,
think
like,
the
was
Sky
great.
arc worked because I quite literally thought to myself, I'm like, okay, I get what they're doing with this, but they literally give her and the way that I've been contextualizing it for my family is a Jessie's origin story from Toy Story 2. It's like, all right, we need a song that sounds like Sarah McLachlan, and then we see her life sucks because she's small. Like, and you get
Well,
this.
you got to remember. Look, every superhero generally has some kind of problematic origin, right? I mean, and
Yeah.
that's what the thing. I think each movie's going to explore that. Chase was abandoned and fearful in the city in the first movie.
When
She
does
was the
Ryder hit
the
puberty? That's the real
she
question.
was yeah. Yeah, I actually asked. So I mean, we are. I apologize if we are derailing for your for your
That's
show.
it's
I
fine.
actually find this interesting. So I interviewed the. I made an effort because of how much you and I and everyone else talks about Paw Patrol. We're at that
Mhm.
age now where we have
Yep.
kids, but are also passionate about the industry. I spoke to the writer and director
Mhm.
this on Monday. I want to say, and I kind of made an effort to. I set it up myself, and I asked them um, about losing my train of thought here.
Sky. We're talking about Sky's powers.
Yeah, it was. I basically asked them if they're going to continue that theme where each movie is going to be about sort of one pup, and that's kind of like how they think it works.
First one
I
was,
mean,
I
it does make
guess,
sense. You got to
Chase.
pull the audience through. What's that?
Was the first one, I guess, was pretty much Chase and
And it was all
Liberty, I
Chase.
guess?
All the
Yeah.
flashbacks were him. Remember, he's an abandoned pup in the city, and he's all afraid of
Yep.
everything, and that's why he has this like PTSD of doing heroics when he's in the city a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, you know, so I'm curious how Ryder keeps finding them all. But they also hinted at me that more familiar faces from the show. I know you seem to be a hater of the show, but for all you
I don't hate the
non-haters
show,
out
it's
there,
fine. It's
yeah,
fine. I just
you
can't
didn't.
wait in, like, 30 years when Paw Patrol gets its own version of Masters of the Universe Revelations, and we're like, "Oh, it was never good!" That's what
Oh,
I'm
shut up. Yeah. No, there's a lot of it that's rough. I'm not gonna lie. Get it rough pun, not intended,
Oh,
but
there we
intended.
go.
But they also I asked them like, hey, look, because in this movie they introduced junior pups, and they also have a weird line where they talk about Chase's costume being a little too tight. It's coming apart because he's getting bigger. And I'm like,
Yeah.
whoa, are they
Are they
actually gonna
gonna
age
grow
up
up?
these dogs
Oh.
and have a next generation? And the director's like, no, it's never gonna happen. These pups are ageless. We just
Yeah.
wanted to show that they could be the mentors to young and they're still, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, okay.
It's because Chase
But
has been hitting the gym. He doesn't skip
yeah, Chase is
leg day because
yeah,
'cause he's
yeah.
got 4 of them.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Okay,
been the
sorry about
Paw
that.
Patrol
Ahsoka, right?
90. Yeah, Ahsoka. Um, so I guess I'll so yes, if you are a longtime listener of this show, I guess not long time. We're over a year. But any of the podcasts that you've been involved with, I think the criticisms of what Disney Plus has brought to the streaming service. We've talked about this. We reviewed something. Secret Invasion, and it was not premiere
Oh
television
boy.
last
Yeah.
time you were on the show. And while I think there is certainly a significant amount of volume, I found myself much more interested. And I know that this comes from the fact that I'm somebody who was heavily invested in the Clone Wars lore and the Rebels lore, and this being a continuation. And we talked about this very briefly when we were playing Call of Duty the other day, that ultimately I do think it would have worked better in animation, but given the fact that there was a percentage of the fan base that for some reason didn't bother to explore this canon of the animated television shows, is now being forced to have to watch that, which I kind of appreciate, where it's the opposite of Marvel right now, where people would consume all of the Marvel content and are now not watching everything. Like Haley, who's been on the show, has watched I think 2 of the shows that have been on Disney Plus, and it isn't becoming event TV. Some are. Obviously, you and I bang the drum that Andor is the best thing Disney's done with Star Wars. Um and while I don't think this works as a complete story, all of the groundwork with this particular characters, I think my biggest criticism is I don't actually think it should have been called Ahsoka, given how it is trying to manage the the 4 main characters from Rebels. I don't know what you would have called it. It honestly should have just been called Star Wars Age of the Empire. Maybe that's what the movie's going to be called. But in terms of it being a continuation from where we last saw everybody in Rebels, I really enjoyed it. And I think this being, now I'm going to somewhat contradict myself, being the end of Ahsoka's journey as part of this story, and maybe season two or the next season is focusing on potentially Ezra's role in the galactic. I guess what are they now? The New Republic is something I'm really interested in. So, are there gaps? For sure. I read your tweet where it's like, and this happened, and that certainly is the case. But I found myself much more interested in this aspect of the post Return of the Jedi world than I have been since the first season of The Mandalorian.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm with you. So where do you rank it amongst the live action shows?
If I'm am I doing it season wide, because that's for me where I kind
Yeah,
of
I
would
guess you
have,
could. Yeah, yeah.
like, Andor is obviously the top. I still think it's the detriment and benefit of Mando season 1 just being this closed story. I think that's probably number 2 for me. And then I would put, yeah, I said Andor already is the number 1. And then I would put Ahsoka probably. I go back and forth with Mando season 2 and 3, because if it's pivoting to Bo-Katan, which is interesting because it is just called The Mandalorian, it technically could be about anybody. I liked, I think, season 3 more so than season 2, just because at least it seemed to have more focus. 'Cause even though I liked the fact that Ahsoka and Luke showed up in The Mandalorian to some degree, that one did kind of feel like backdoor pilot the season,
Mhm.
which doesn't really work in rewatch. I've felt no need to go back to season 2 of Mandalorian, where I've watched a number of the first season's episodes. And so then I guess de facto that would put season 3 there, and then a dramatic drop off to Boba Fett. I do not share the opinion with Kofi that Boba Fett is some like mystery that's actually good. No, I think it's trash.
It's
It's
garbage.
it's really bad. So I liked Ahsoka a lot. I think, while it I was having a conversation with Stephen Colbert about this, like, who is this for? And even though in my mind, if I had to like outline all the canon of Star Wars, I include Hayden Christensen's Anakin with Matt Lanter. That's the same character. Now, the thing that I love that this show did give us, which is an Anakin I actually liked, because the Anakin, I think on purpose, that we meet in the prequels, played by Hayden Christensen, sucks. Like, he's never interesting until he turns into Darth Vader and he decides to yell no, which, one of the things, if you are a Canadian listening to this and still have cable, the Star Wars films are always played on, I think it's called CTV Sci-Fi now, are always
Mm.
played. And that happened to be the episode, the part of episode 3 that I saw while I was flipping channels between football. But so getting that, and we've talked about this, what I wanted out of this show was a live action canon event of Clone Wars, and the fact that we get to connect that to all of the lore we've had with all those characters, I really liked. Like, were there more references than there needed to be? I would say absolutely, but I think
Mhm.
connecting that to this character's arcs worked a lot better than member berries typically can be, in my opinion,
Gotcha.
right? Because
Uh,
Ahsoka's had the opportunity to work with Luke and Anakin, which is something I think almost nobody has.
True. Yeah, that's an interesting connective thread she can play going
Mhm.
forward. If they actually, that's a whole interesting conversation to have separately. Is wondering like how going forward, like how much are they going to lean into the original trilogy characters in this
Mhm.
era versus now these lost characters in another galaxy and this version of the New Republic fleet that we're seeing so poorly revealed to us in the show.
Well,
But to go back to your,
go ahead.
sorry,
No, go
go ahead.
ahead.
No,
No,
I was
no.
gonna no, finish your thought because I'm gonna change topic in a second here. So
Okay. Well, so, and in terms of it having this, like, it's ironic to me because I've been having this conversation more frequently, particularly this year, with content, and I hate using that word, but sometimes that's how it's fed to us. But a
yeah.
television season, particularly, I have less issue with something like that not like ending more openly, because typically the way network television was produced, you needed something to draw in viewers for whatever the next part of the story was, or if there was a continuation in a film. And I've been having this back and forth with Nalina, my wife, all year, with the fact that, spoilers, that Across the Spider Verse ends on a cliffhanger. Now, I've argued that the actual lead of the film, her story is complete, and I'm saying her on purpose. But Star Wars is a great example of that. Like Empire has a soft Empire of the Strikes Back. Empire Strikes Back has a soft ending, and leading into the next adventure with them watching Lando fly in Han Solo's clothes in the Millennium Falcon to finding wherever Han went to. So this being a part of a story, I had less issues with that. And talking about the New Republic, which I'm sure we're going to get into, it is it feels like we are going to build to some, in my mind it's almost essentially Avengers Endgame pre-sequel trilogy, because then we can potentially finally put the OT characters to rest, where you could potentially actually recast them finally, if we're doing this Thrawn Age of Empires, Heir to the Empire, whatever the hell we're going to do, where you have this last event that leads into whatever the hell we get with the First Order. You can't tell that story convincingly or properly without including them. And maybe it's a way of us getting, I guess they would be older, but even if we get Solo guy back, maybe we actually recast Luke, and maybe, I don't know, we get Billy Lord playing Princess Leia or something. Like Star Wars finally doing what Kofi and I talked about on our Star Trek Strange New Worlds episode, recasting these legacy characters.
They should, and they already
Will they? No.
have with Londo and Han,
Yes.
I should
Yeah.
say. And I know there's the Londo show in development, of course, but to me, Alden Ehrenreich was way better than he should have been in Solo. I think he's underrated, and he was incredible in that show, especially given the circumstances he was put in. So I actually quite love Solo, a Star Wars story. And the more I think about the saga films, I appreciate those. Rogue One, of course, but I think of Solo in a higher light, despite its, it has some issues, I think. But really enjoy the production of that, what they did with some of the characters. Okay, with Ahsoka, your first point you brought up was about the title of the character, and I thought similar, especially the first half. It really felt like someone else's show. It felt like a Sabine show, which
Hmm.
is cool because Sabine is by far the most dynamic, complex, and interesting character who has the most to potentially offer, like right now, given her circumstances, both as like a sort of lost apprentice, finding her purpose, trying to get her friend back. Is she a Mando? Can she learn the Force? Can she do this? What is her role in all of this? If she succeeds, what's next? And then you look at where her role could fit in the future of the Mandalorian show. You're like, oh wow, she could be. Maybe she is the centerpiece to what's coming up, and maybe she should be. And of course, Ahsoka. And a lot of people complained about this. I didn't. The stoicism, the how the or the quote unquote the lack of personality of Rosario's character, and to me that was not an issue because it fit with how she was introduced in Book of Boba Fett and before that, The Mandalorian. It fit with where I saw her at the very last sequence of Rebels, right?
Hmm.
And her whole role as Fulcrum and all of that. She was already past being the quippy child. She was so far past that. She had gone through, fought every war, lost so much, overcame it all, went lone wolf, and despite all of that, helped start the Rebel Alliance. It's like, come on, guys, we are so past quips. She's not a teen anymore.
Hmm.
That's 20
Yeah.
years ago, you know? So that worked, but you're right. The title didn't quite work, but I don't, in my head, I'm like, let's just call it Rebels season 5. I'm like, wait, this is not about Rebels at all. This is a very
Yeah.
personal journey right now. Right.
Hmm.
So I don't know what they could have titled it. Obviously from a marketing standpoint, they want to set up Ahsoka as a pillar character. And I get it. But you're right. It doesn't fit necessarily what's on screen during these 8 episodes. Look, my overall thoughts about this is like, and like you, and I said this in podcast X, and you'll hear it again when you listen to that. I'm hooked because this one, more than all the other shows so far, has the most like expansion of the lore. It's bringing in, it's a real big lore dump. It's also translating so much stuff you and I have talked about forever from animation into live action, but it's doing too much of that without focusing on the core story. Like, think of every James Gunn quote about the status of superhero or adaptations. It's like They're just making adaptations based on IP for the sake of doing it. But do they have a story that they're really focused on, and do they deliver on that in this product? Because if that doesn't work, nothing else matters. That's why Gunn can get away with giving a bunch of nonsense characters, because there's a through line, an emotional arc for someone or someone's. I don't think this show really has that. In fact, I don't even think it's complete as a season, setting up a season two. I feel like it's half a season. I think they really undercut this by making it 8 episodes. And also, despite all this lore dump, with the few things they actually do, like all that happens is Thrawn gets thing and leaves. We don't know really why. We don't know the special cargo he's carrying. We don't know why these Night Mothers or these witches of Dathomir are working for him, or what they're running from, or what happened to that planet. They don't tell you anything. They show you the most interesting character in Balin Skull and give this character no dialogue in the final episode to end the season. Weird. And his final shot is him looking at a thing that no one in the world will know except the few people that watch the show. And the people that watch the show and know about Mortis and the ones and all the history, that's for nobody. And will they pay that off in a meaningful way that's going to change the universe? Absolutely not, because we already saw episode 7, like 7, 8, 9. So it's a weird thing to be throwing all this lore stuff out at you, because we know later on it doesn't matter. And they could tell a great story in season 3 or 4 in this movie, but they have to earn that, and they earned nothing, right? So,
Yeah.
and then they skip through little, I say little, but they're big things, like Sabine going from I can't move my coffee cup to boom, I can block everything and I can fight and I can throw people. It's like, wait, like we are shortening the already short time of Jedi training, like decade by decade in Star Wars storytelling. Like the whole problem with Luke being special, I'm like, he didn't have enough training, blah 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 blah. And then like Sabine has like a 3-second training montage, minus the montage. She just does it, and it's like, I don't understand why they need to keep doing that. You know what I mean?
That's fair.
I'm getting to nitpicks now, but they don't really deliver enough in this one, other than here are these characters you saw, little glimpses of what's special. But the real problem is, like, as much as I'm interested in the lore and where this can go, the same problem with this show applies to a lot of other Disney Plus stuff. The quality of production, the execution of these stories is so lackluster. It kills me that we see this scene of 3 people with lightsabers walk into a room of zombie stormtroopers, and it's like a single shot and nobody's moving anywhere, doing anything tactically smart or anything. It's so cheap, and it's all in the same set. We just saw characters before with green screens, and I don't understand why we aren't going so big for this monumental moment. This should be the coolest action scene we've seen on TV all year. It is not interesting at all what they do. They have
No,
force powers, lightsabers, undead zombies with lasers, and what do we get? Like, this wouldn't even qualify for a good video game cutscene. You know what I mean? So,
Mhm.
I'm shocked at how bad that is. And there's little moments throughout this, that one of the final shots, one of the most important moments of this is Ezra gets back. He reunites with Hera, and what happens? He finds a fleet he knows nothing about. He wears a stormtrooper outfit and a helmet, doesn't identify himself on approach. He gets into the ship. He leaves the little ship with a stormtrooper helmet on. No one knows who he is. Who wrote that scene? Wouldn't they know it's Ezra coming in and be hyped? Why didn't Hera give him a little hug instead of standing there like a statue for a 3-second long shot? It's like, they have forgot how to tell a story and execute in any individual moment, and it's infuriating that this many seasons of live action Star Wars big budget TV that they can't get the little things right. So it's got like, it's funny because almost the opposite problem happens to a certain extent in the saga films. Like I thought, like J.J. Abrams came in and cleaned up all the technical aspects of shooting action scenes and visuals and the landscapes. There's a lot of things in episode 9 that are really, really, really beautiful, and a lot of problems he tried to solve while dumping the main storyline. The whole saga dumped the main storyline, but like there were little technical things that got so right in that. And then the opposite is true in Disney Plus, where you have all these cool story things about to happen. They tell you half of it, maybe, and it's just so cheaply made with $150 million budget. You know what I mean? So it's
I must
that
have
part of
really
it's
good
weird.
catering.
They must have incredible catering, and this volume thing they keep relying on must have like a diamond platform floor. Like that's the only I cannot explain why they keep doing this. Have they not learned? Watch any 5 seconds of Andor, landscape, establishing shot, close up, dialogue delivery, and then watch any 5 seconds of Ahsoka. And it's like you're watching a fan film versus cinema. And I do not understand why that's the case. So, and that's, yeah. So the technical part applies to just dialogue delivery and capturing someone's emotion and facial expressions. And that's why we talk about the New Republic. I think those scenes where we see the politicians, including Mon Mothma, who's incredible in Andor, are just horrendously cringe in Ahsoka. I cannot believe someone at Lucasfilm was like, that's the shot. Put it in the edit. It's like, oh, I cannot believe it. Like it's cringeworthy how poor it is. And it's so bad. Some of this stuff wouldn't even fly. Maybe it would fly some of it in animation because you don't because the art is different. It's not you're not capturing a thing on camera and moving the camera. You can animate it your own way and pick your shot. But I'm shocked still at how ugly and how badly staged so much of this is at this point. So I think we need better directors and a better system in on this. And I feel bad because some of these directors are legitimately talented. So I don't know what it is. It's like, are they running into resource issues? They shouldn't be. They have an unlimited blank check, I feel like, for some of this. So is it time constraints? Or is there some person blocking them, the
Yeah.
opposite of a yes man, who's just like, oh, yeah, it's fine, let's go, let's go, let's go. It's like, it's not fine. There's a reason Disney's not touting numbers or like critical acclaim for Ahsoka right now. Meanwhile, I just got an email 5 hours ago about Loki's ratings. Interesting, right? So, and if they're building a whole film mini franchise on this, they're in trouble because so few people, I think, watch this. This is a niche within a niche, and it's not good enough for a $200 million worldwide release. It's not good enough,
Mhm.
and I don't know what they're going to do to get there because Mandalorian season 3 to me sucked, and then Book of Boba Fett was terrible. So I'm like, this is their key pieces they're building towards. Oh, they better figure out this deep fake Luke Skywalker stuff. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to sell this movie. So there you go. Here I go. I went no negative again. I like the
No,
owl. That was cool to see the owl.
yeah, and obviously the deep lore stuff is super niche, and I think
Oh
ultimately
God.
that is the biggest letdown is even as I guess I didn't even rank Obi-Wan.
Oh
I
yeah.
guess that kind of
Again, there's little
shows.
pieces of that, but there's so many cheap, awful scenes.
Yeah.
But
Well,
look, you have two amazing leads, right?
it's to me
Like that Leia girl was incredible.
it's ironic because I was actually discussing this at my Thanksgiving yesterday. Why I didn't enjoy the Continental is because it really feels like TV when comparing to the world of John
Right.
Wick, and
I yeah.
it's
Is that
un.
finished yet? By the way, are all three up?
I
I watched the
I
first one and I'm like, I don't know about this, and I kind of didn't go back to it.
I don't know. Let me check. I don't think it is, but I could be wrong. All right, let's see.
I was pretty
Wikipedia.
excited for that, but the first episode turned me off, so
Yeah,
I didn't.
yeah, it's done. It's done. All right, I didn't see the third one,
No,
but
maybe I should
in
watch that.
terms of like that is being different. It's actually it's made for TV to some degree. And like I
Right.
don't want that to sound like an insult, but the resource management is substantially different. As somebody who watched through all of the Arrowverse, that should look a certain way compared to something like this. And ultimately what seems to be really disappointing is the people who are available to streaming TV has never been better in terms of availability of A-list talent. And now that the writers have gotten a fair deal, I'm happy about that. But in terms of the other avenues for the storytelling in streaming, it's one of the reasons that I don't think films really work is because you're putting in these blockbuster budgets, but at the end of the day, you get something like, and this is probably insulting, and to some degree it probably is, but something like Gray Man, where I don't want to see that theatrically. Nothing about what they're doing visually sells the pun intended, but the magic of Star Wars, right? We don't have
Yeah.
choreography, even in something like Obi-Wan, where it was, I would say it was more classic to the prequel style of lightsaber fighting, which as flashy as it is and should have been the style that I love, given how when those films came out, it's so impractical, so it doesn't make any goddamn sense. But like they're just swinging at nothing. Um, it's unfortunate that it seems like whatever their checklist is, it's like casting. Okay, we did this really well. And rest in peace, Ray Stevenson, because with what limited screen time Bale and Skull had, I have to see more of that character, whether it's played by somebody else or maybe we get him in Tales
Do
of
you
Jedi or
know
something.
Balin Skull what exactly he's trying to do?
No.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Another thing they set up without any explanation this season.
Yes.
Just dumped a character. So that's every character arc almost, right? So
Yeah.
I don't that's not good enough. We can't do that. We are
No, it's
too many
true.
seasons deep.
Incomplete storytelling is never going to be something that I think works in the streaming model, particularly when, as somebody I know who prefers the binge method, when you can just hop onto something and potentially watch through an entire series
Yeah.
if it's done well. So it's I think it's unfortunate. I think I enjoyed not think I'm telling my opinion. I enjoyed a lot more exploration of the lore and seeing characters that I'm familiar with. It is something that I credit Dave Filoni for doing with Rebels, because similar to something you mentioned earlier, where I went, well, all these characters have to die because they're not in the OT. And they managed to tell a compelling story that was much shorter than Clone Wars, given how it was only 4 seasons. And yeah, there's a lot of silliness in that. There typically is with Dave Filoni's universe, but exploring things like the world between worlds and what that could mean. One of the benefits is, again, they have a gap of 40 years. The gap between the prequels and the OT was at best 20. So in theory, something could happen that actually matters. But at the end of the day, because of this, the way that they are making these stories, they have already put themselves in a box because they released a mediocre
Yeah,
trilogy with the sequels.
I think I'm getting really frustrated because I also don't know the status of the universe right now. Like the New Republic won. They are the Senate's different now. There's a New Republic fleet serving as some sort of reluctant galactic police force who want to do nothing about any threat, whether it's
Mhm.
Gideon or now Tarkin, not Tarkin, Jesus, as Thrawn. And they didn't establish why Thrawn is such a threat. He's been mentioned a couple times in some really cringe sequences of Moff Gideon and this like weird Imperial circuit, and
Mhm.
some familiar faces from the books there as well, and the games, I guess too. But yeah, like what is Thrawn's thing is like he just makes acceptable losses. His whole big accomplishment is he like lost to Ezra and then he got back and he's going to a planet no one knows. I mean, we know Dathomir, we know, but like really, like the audience doesn't know why that's interesting. So that's a weird thing. Like you hinge your main villain, the threat, on this so far nothingness.
Yeah.
And the other side of it, I don't know the state of the galaxy. I know nobody wants to help out anyone, and no one believes their best general is like Hera. So I'm like, I don't understand what anyone's doing, and so is Thrawn a real threat? Why? Like that one idiot politician might be right. Like I don't understand what he's gonna do. He's got one ship. What is he doing? Are we gonna fight just magic? It's like you got to that doesn't fit, right? You can only go
Mhm.
so far with that, knowing what happens in the future stories, which are canonical, right?
Mhm.
And the comics get weirder and explore some versions of interesting things in the far past, especially the High Republic era. But that's not in the shows or movies yet. So I don't know. And this fleet doesn't seem very useful. The New Republic and their little tiny little Senate office building doesn't seem very useful. So I just don't understand the status of the galaxy and who the major players are right now. Is Luke have some kids he's training right now? Is Han off being a father to young Ben right now? I think the timeline works out that Ben would be a child. No, I guess Leia will be training with Luke right now. I don't know about Ben's situation if he's even born yet. I don't even know.
If
So,
she's training with Luke, am I? Yeah, I make sure I mute myself. If she's training with Luke, she's she might be pregnant, because that's the reason she stops training. If I remember the
oh,
first of the, what's that book? I have it. Aftermath, the Aftermath trilogy.
I remember Bloodlines, and Ben's already a couple years old, and then
Yeah.
she's not doing any Jedi training then. So,
No. Well, I need
yeah,
to see Zeb in a gay relationship with Agent Callus in season 2 of this.
Callus would
That's
be a cool character to cast.
super
Zeb
cool.
not being in the show, also a huge miss.
Or a Force ghost of Kanan. That was a little disappointing because we got pretty much everybody. We've seen everybody but Kanan in live action form.
I think if we see the kid back again,
Jason,
that I think that should happen.
that'd be so cool if that's how if that's how Jason meet that. See, that feels like a Dave Filoni scene. Jason somehow conjures up a Force ghost, and
Yeah,
Kanan's
well,
there.
I think all
Kanan.
these little Jedi kids are going to be all part of. They're setting up so much stuff, right? This whole other
Mhm.
galaxy sets up James Mangold's film. All these little young Jedi we're seeing, even Grogu. I expect all of this to appear in Ray's movie, right? So,
Yeah,
the post episode, the equivalent of episode 10 or whatever it's going to be.
yeah.
So, yeah. But again, it's all just set up to set up the thing to set up the thing, and we're not executing any individual stories well, except Andor, which already has
Whoa,
the
whoa,
most
whoa, whoa,
final of
whoa!
final points.
Bad Batch.
Okay, so I'm specifically mention. I actually intentionally live action because to me,
Yes.
Andor is so far above everything else, and
Mhm.
then underneath that, right now you have Bad Batch, and then
And Tales of the
way down
Jedi.
below, yeah, I guess there's things I like. There's stuff in Visions I think is amazing, stellar on its own too. But in
Mhm.
terms of like, I guess ongoing staple story chapters where we're going
Sure.
right now, I will say Andor Bad Batch season 2 just blew my mind. The back half of that season has some individual episodes which are just so far above anything Disney Star Wars has done at all, right?
Mhm.
Like Andor's the only thing better. It's just incredible, and everyone needs to watch that. Yeah, and then I have some bits of Mandalorian season 1 and 2, but yeah, I remember there's so many episodes that are just terrible. A lot of Tatooine stuff, which is terrible. Like, so it's really rough trying to go back and watch Mandalorian because there's a lot of goofy stuff. They really hurt themselves with not having Pedro around and not having this maskless character, and just dropping the Grogu arc and changing it halfway through. And I don't really know what's going on over there. And the way they present the Mandalorians, I don't know how far that can go, but I'm sure like the Mandalorian army will be like the hero force in this movie Filoni will make, right? So yeah, it's very weird. And of course, Boba Fett's like not even. They should just pretend that never happened. Start again. Yeah. So I don't know. Ahsoka's interesting. It's just so incomplete. It feels like half of Ahsoka. Volume 2 is supposed to come out in a couple weeks. That would make more sense to me, but that's not the case. There's no date or no season 2 announcement yet.
Well, you were
Weird.
at D23, so if you don't know, then nobody knows.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Destination D23. Yeah. Yeah. I forget what
Um,
we got. We got the Ahsoka ears. That's right. No story stuff. They just talked about lightsabers.
Perfect. Speaking of, I hope if we do get to see some recast version of actually I don't even know if the batteries in this are good anymore. Yeah, let's go.
Which was that? Is that Luke's? Nice.
My favorite lightsaber. We've seen it for a total of like 12 minutes.
My favorite of like, is that a Force FX lightsaber? I assume.
Yeah.
I like the Leia one for that from Episode 9. I think it's
That
such a
was
beautiful. It's so beautiful how the Force FX one is so well done.
Yeah, I love it because it just feels like I know this is not the case, but it's like I'm holding Mark Hamill's prop. Like that's how it feels. Like that's what I
Oh
like so
yeah,
much about
I felt that way with my very first Force FX lightsaber. I bought like the Wave One
that. Hmm.
Anakin one like 13 years ago, which is like Anakin, Luke's, Rey's. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
yeah,
But it doesn't even work right now. It's so old. But
yeah,
that felt like this is the King Arthur's sword of this universe before there was 10
exactly.
billion lightsabers. Yeah,
Yeah, and when they could only be blue. I love the
yeah,
fact I learned this recently, and I don't know why I didn't know this. The reason it is green was because the first sequence where you would have seen one on Return of the Jedi was like just blue skies.
yeah. The Jabba
Like,
skiff.
yeah,
It's all. Yeah, the way they did the green screening or green screen. The way they did it was green screen actually. But yeah, it
yeah.
was the sky and everything. They had to change it because of that reason. You didn't know that? That was like one of my first kid
I
pieces
don't
of
know
lore.
why. I don't know why. It just was one of the things I just never. It's funny because one of my favorite things to watch when I was sick in high school was what was it called? It's like Dreams of History or something. What I can't remember, but it's the making of Star Wars documentary.
Hmm.
Empire of Dreams, that's what it's called. And it was
Never
just the
seen it.
making of, and that never comes up, which I find funny. It was on the DVDs, like the first DVD release in the early 2000s. Which the worst
I
part
think
was, of course, they were the special editions, which
I
again,
think when I was a kid, I had some like mid '80s, late '80s like magazines that were like one-off magazines. I had a Return of the Jedi one. They talked all about that. But man, just changing that lightsaber, giving a new one, was probably the most financially smart long-term decision ever made
oh
in
yeah,
cinema.
oh absolutely.
Yeah,
And now I'm currently playing through Jedi Survivor. You can just have whatever the hell you want. So
yeah, totally.
I still think that should have been a Kanan story. Anyways, all right. So we're talking about a streaming show on Disney. Why don't we pivot over to Loki, and then we can end this with um, the creator. So Loki season 2 debuted with Ouroboros. We'll talk about that in a second. I know we talked about briefly ages ago when you ranked all of Phase 4.
Oh yeah.
Um, I don't know if I have that photo anymore. Where did you put it? Slides.
I think I
But
tweeted and edited one for you with the big Hawkeye arrowhead. Remember that? The Pym Tech arrowhead.
yeah, exactly. That would have been hilarious. I was not a fan of season 1. Here we go. Is this yours? I think it might be. Yeah, this is yours. So you had Loki as like a B plus according
Yeah.
to this graph. I did not enjoy season 1. I thought it was like poorly written Doctor Who because it continues to be the use of the multiverse in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is annoying as all hell can be done. And so I was cautiously optimistic about this. Obviously, adding Ki Hui Kwan is something I'm very excited for. And I have to say, not looking forward to this. I thoroughly enjoyed the first episode. I was shocked.
I'm with you. Yeah, I don't know if it was a B plus or more of a B, but yeah, I remember like here's the thing. A lot of people think Loki, along with WandaVision, I guess, is like the show. It's certainly the most successful Marvel show from Disney's perspective on Disney Plus. Interestingly, the only one to get a season two. So far. I do I had some like specific problems. I think you hit the main one, which is like the multiverse of it all. It is still, and I've seen the first 4 episodes of Loki season two. Between the Avengers 3 and 4, Multiverse of Madness, Quantum Mania, and now 2 seasons of Loki, it is very unclear and inconsistent in how they explain the rules of time travel in the multiverse. Right.
And No Way
So
Home.
I guess No Way Home too. Yeah,
There's
another
there's
great.
time travel elements in that, right? With when the villains got brought to,
Yep.
I guess they Kevin calls it Earth 616. I'm sorry, this is I'll if someone clips this. Kevin Feige's wrong. The
Yeah.
MCU is not Earth 616. That is the
Uh,
mainline comic universe. He's wrong.
Iman Vellani called him out to his face on that.
Yeah. Canadian. The
Yeah,
best part of the MCU Phase 4 is still the
that's
Canadian.
it. That's it. Very hopeful the SAG strike ends so we can talk to her about the Marvels.
If she's not on Hot Ones, I'm going to cry.
Oh, she would totally be great on that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Amazing.
she's writing the Miss Marvel comic right now for
She
Marvel, so that's
is.
interesting.
Yeah, after they
Ashley,
killed her off.
yeah, stupid, but yeah. Where was I? Yeah, so the multiverse thing is a huge problem, and they are now, given that Kang the Conqueror is coming back for this season, and it was part of the ending of season one, and of course in Quantumania, like is the threat of at least one of the 2 Avengers movies coming up. They are relying heavily on Loki, and of course this TVA, according to our own interviews, everybody's interviews with Kevin Wright, one of the producers, they are sort of like the multiverse shield now, the new shield going forward as they do whatever timey-wimey stuff with the multiverse.
Are we
I
going to
don't
talk Doctor
understand any of
Who? Can
that.
we talk Doctor Who now?
Sonic screwdrivers. I know
I
a
got a
Sonic
bunch of
hammer,
them. You want
man.
me to go get them?
No, I don't know anything about Doctor Who. I know there's a big fandom for it. I like the actors. That's all I know.
So
Bring it
much they
back,
brought him
David
back.
Tennant. We didn't even talk about David Tennant as Hu Yang in Ahsoka. Highlight character, very much like that.
Phenomenal. I don't think anyone will ever be able to surpass him. If I were to elect
What do
a
you mean?
deity,
As a droid?
no, just wait. As a nerd god, I would elect David Tennant in terms of the every single franchise he has dipped his toes into. I don't think anybody beats him.
Uh,
Star Wars, he's done Marvel, he's done Harry Potter, he's done Doctor Who, he's done
yeah, but you
Ninja
know what? You're
Turtles,
gonna have
he's
like
done DuckTales.
you're very quickly gonna have Oscar Isaac and Pedro Pascal kind of dipping. They're already halfway there doing every friggin' franchise, right? Like,
But you look at the quality of the toe dipping.
you don't
That's
like
the
X
point.
Men Apocalypse? What do you mean?
Here's the thing about X-Men Apocalypse really quickly. That one scene where they bring Michael Fassbender back to the Holocaust site just it's a great scene. That's all I liked about that movie. Apocalypse brings him back, and like that's when he realizes he can affect the molecular level of everything around him. But ultimately, the Fox should have just followed Matthew Vaughn's path because they were going to do Apocalypse second, Time Travel third. That was also on Canadian cable. X-Men: Days of Future Past this week.
I cut the cord many moons ago. I don't have Canadian cable. I'm a streaming man. I'm a
I have it for
Scotch
sports.
nowadays.
It's cheaper
I'm a
for sports.
Yeah, I did. I tried that for a while, and then I realized I just didn't watch
You watch
anything.
sports?
So
That's
no,
okay.
I try. I'm like, I'm not people over to do drinks, and I'm like, then the kids happen, and I'm like, oh, this is not
We need to figure
real.
out a Jays game next season because we've always talked
Yeah,
about
maybe I do try to go to one a year. I haven't gone to a Leafs game in a couple years though, but or
it.
Raptors,
And
I
they
guess, for
just
that
went up in
instance.
price.
What Leafs?
Yeah, they went up in price.
Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the wrong business.
Yes.
Okay. The other issue I have with Loki season one. You want to hear a nitpick of nitpicks? There's a sequence which breaks the entire show for me, and I feel like
Okay.
someone forgot something. In the first season, I want to say it was episodes 4 or 5. It's when Loki and Sylvie are together, and they're on a planet. It seems like the world's coming down on them, and they sit side by side, and it's kind of as beautiful. I've told you this before, maybe you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, they're sitting side by side on like a bench or a log or whatever debris, and they're having a heart-to-heart moment. It seems like it's the end, and then Loki uses his powers to conjure up like a blanket of some sort to keep them warm. And I'm like, wait a second, they are frost giants. They do not feel cold. In my head, I'm like, oh, this is smart. He's creating this blanket to create this relationship with her because he's manipulating her. He's the god of mischief. He's totally using her because that's what anyone who knows Loki and has seen any Loki anything knows that's what he does. I'm like, this is genius. This is going to come back later. And that never happens. They just played it straight. He was actually conjuring a blanket for this girl hours after trying to take over Earth and being pure evil and psycho. And it's like, wait, even though they don't need blankets because they don't get cold, they're frost giants. Do you remember the blankets he needed when he went to Jotunheim? Oh, there was no blankets because he didn't feel cold.
No, he
He
wore
didn't
a
wear
big
anything.
poncho. He borrowed it from Cal Kestis. He wore a big poncho. No,
Loki did?
no, I was
No,
joking.
and that I think he just wore his, yeah, he just wore his full on whatever costume, no effect. So I'm like, it was just absurd to me. I thought they broke it. They broke Loki. He should have had his mischief moment and then eventually turn, quote unquote good or become an anti-hero, whatever. Anyways, other than that, I thought he was fine. The Sylvie actress is super talented. That was great casting and everything. So yeah, season 2 introduces us to OB or Ouroboros, whatever, and wonderful addition. I hope that goes somewhere cool. Just a scene stealer, so charming and funny.
The fact that
Yeah,
he
look,
wasn't working for 20 years is just a Hollywood should get slapped. Like just a crime.
I've been seeing videos of him working as like a stunt
Yeah, for X-Men
director,
1.
coordinator for the first X-Men film, working with
Yeah.
Hugh. Yeah, I was like, ended a huge stunt double,
Yeah.
and I was like, this is so cool. What a talented dude. Yeah, I'm glad he has he's in top 5 highest demand actor, and I think everywhere right now. I think everyone would have loved to work with him. So
This is might sound like um not stunt like only casting because he's doing this. He should be the new Q in the new James Bond moving forward. He'd be perfect.
the new Q. Never
Yeah.
thought that is an outside pick, but I like it.
Yeah. Why not?
I'm very curious what the hell they're going to do with anything James Bond related. That's another conversation. But yeah, they put him everything. I mean, like I think I think honestly, the only way you ever bring back Indiana Jones is by bringing him back somehow. You know
Oh,
what I
the
mean?
Adventures of Short Round, 1,000%.
That's the only way you can continue that IP. Otherwise, it's going to be dormant for decades. I think so.
Mhm.
Unless Sean Patrick Fleming wants to do it, but I don't think it's ever going to happen. He's not the right type now.
Well, the I talked about this in Dial of Destiny. The biggest crime with the Indiana Jones franchise, well, I've actually never, I meant to do it this summer, but I watched Peaky Blinders instead, is to go through that because I actually own it all. Is that the Indiana Jones in like the early 2000s needed a Clone Wars show. It needed to tell the stories from Last Crusade, or you could have done it leading to 2008 when Crystal Skull came out. You should have been telling us what he was doing during World War II, like post Last Crusade to the 50s. You needed a show there
Yeah, I'm
because there are
surprised
so
they never
many
dipped into
gaps.
animation for that. Yeah.
No, well, and I remember seeing relatively recently somebody had done like there's like an animated short of like what it could have looked like, and it's awesome.
Huh.
But Lucasfilm was never known what to do with Indiana Jones.
That's very strange. Yeah. Um, yeah, but sorry to go back to season 2. I love how isolated, like, it hits the ground running from the moment
Mhm.
season 1 ends, which I like. It's very
Yep.
kinetic and cool. The quality is great. I like how, and you'll see this as you keep watching this episode. It's still even more so in the first season, very contained in like a several sets. Of course, they go out to do
Sure.
things here and there, but most of it's in these main big sets. And I got this very Severance vibe to that, where it's kind of like it's somewhat retro futuristic design interiors with like one specific type of lighting, and this is like that, but the Loki style lighting. It's all just like this beige tan, not steampunk, but the sort of retro textile. You know what I mean? But
It kind
I
of
love that.
reminds me of like Mad Men, Batman the Animated Series,
Yes.
right?
Yes. I like that's a good comparison because you get the colorings of Mad Men with the Batman sort of style and visual flair with
Yeah,
I
like
should say production design.
1940s,
Yeah,
90s tech.
sort of. Yeah. And there's some cool stuff there. And you get the OB character and then some new sets you see there. It's very cool. And it's the same like core group of characters with like 2 additions basically just doing their thing, like doing their play. And it's such a high caliber cast with a very snippy like great writing and great like shooting. Like, it's a high production. It's very good. It's what they should have always been doing. We got a lot of elements of this with WandaVision when they started it off, but most of the shows have kind of lost it. You know what I mean? They feel very generic. This is not that, and it's high quality. The only thing, the hook is like, I think Loki doesn't need the MCU. It's a cool thing on its own. It has potential to continue its own stories, right? And in the background, they can say these things are happening without having to rely on it. And there's a mention of Thor being Loki's brother, but they don't really need the MCU. But the MCU needs Loki. which is so interesting to me. Both the character, but also the story and the quality. So it's they're in an interesting position where like the MCU is so like middling right now, and there's zero hype, and no one cares, and the quality's not there. And Loki comes out the gate running, high quality show. And I'll say this, and I mentioned this earlier, like they show us the first 4 episodes very intentionally. There's some crazy stuff that happens in episode 4 where I'm like, it's the first time in covering the MCU for 15 years where I'm like, I have no idea what's happening next. And it was cool what happened. So I'm very excited to see how they stick that landing in episodes 5 and 6, and what if, or if it does even mean anything for any other projects coming forward that we don't even know about yet. Who knows? But so that's exciting to me because I loved watching the first 4, and for the first time in a very long time with the MCU, I'm like, yes, give me more. So coming from me who hates Disney Plus content, and not hate, but I'm very down on Disney Plus IP stuff. I think that's a pretty glowing review.
Absolutely. 5, 10 out of 10. I think ultimately back to season 1, what made me so disappointed about season 1 was, and I think general fans, if not professionals, whatever the hell I would classify myself as, um, was so frustrating about phase 4 leading forward was, even if things fell into place accidentally with leading into the Infinity Saga, at the end of the day, there wasn't any massive gaps where you went, wait, well, how does that work? Things sort of did build to a timely conclusion with that particular storyline. And what was so freaking frustrating about the introduction of the whole multiverse era was nothing felt cohesive. And particularly with the introduction of what the multiverse meant in the MCU, what the rules are don't seem to be consistent at all. Where Doctor Strange in Spider-Man, we have 3 actors playing Peter Parker, and then in Doctor Strange, it's the same actor playing 4 versions of the character. It's 4 because we have
Yeah,
zombie, we have our version, we have one who dies in the beginning, and then we have evil. Not evil. Yeah, and then we have evil one he fights.
yeah,
Sorry, no, no. There is still 4. There's the evil. There's the one who dies in the beginning who turns into the zombie.
comes
There's
back.
our
Yeah,
Steven. There's the Steven he fights at the end, and then there's the Steven they kill on the Earth with um John Krasinski. So there is 4.
right.
There's 4. I was counting one twice, but there's still 4. Um, but the rules don't make any sense, and particularly leading into all the Kang stuff, like Loki. If you watch Loki, it should have mattered to those films, like the whole multiverse being accessible and all this stuff, which you can kind of figure out because of when these things came out. But now with the multiverse being explorable and seeing the time, like the, again, however the hell they're explaining it, and particularly we'll get to this at the end, but the way that time travel works in the TVA is very reminiscent of how most of us who were born in the late 80s, early 90s think of time travel, which is the past affecting the present, particularly with that conversation happening back and forth with Obi, Mobius, and Loki all at the same time. Like, I like that style of time travel storytelling, particularly
Yeah.
with when we meet the character, it's very Doctor Who in that sense, where it really did remind me of certain episodes where we're seeing something at a specific point in time and then getting the explanation for why the character does or doesn't know what they know afterwards.
So the TVA explanation, and the first season did this too. There's a lot of visuals in season 2 so far, where you get like the sacred timeline, which I don't know what
Mhm.
that means. That's so weird to me.
And then there's
It has all,
spaghetti and tomato sauce. Oh no, that's a different
yeah,
universe.
yeah, yeah. Oh my god, the Flash. Yeah, yeah. Bring it back. That, by the way, that scene at the time though was really really funny.
It's a great scene. Like
I
Michael
like that scene.
Keaton's Bruce Wayne is great in those scenes. It's
It's
hilarious.
it's crazy long hair Bruce Wayne.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's like a visual of like the sacred timeline and the branches, and then they're going out TVA and like pruning the extra branches, protect the main timeline. All these things don't belong, and usually each one is caused by whatever an event, someone time traveling, someone messing something up, or whatever.
Mhm.
That's a big theme for season 2, of course. So I like how their version of time travel. I know you mentioned the '80s thing, where like the past would affect the future, but in this case, they treat it differently. So the past, if you went to the past and did something, it doesn't affect the sacred timeline. It creates the branch. So
Mhm,
now the decision point is, well, we maintain the sacred timeline by cutting off the branch, pruning it, they call it, right?
mhm.
Which effectively vanquishes billions and billions or trillions of life forms, I guess. It's also another hiccup, and they haven't really explored this yet, is like this is so Earth human focused, it seems. Like, is the timeline always referring to just Earth stuff, obviously? Or is there like a billion Thors? Are the Thors screwing around creating branches? They have to go prune the Thor timelines?
This
Why
is
is there
why
no
I hate it.
Asgardians in the TVA?
I much
uh,
preferred the DC version where it's different Earths. Things are happening on different Earths, like a decision there you can make a decision like yes or no. That's a different Earth where you made that decision. But the fact like it's as big like you've read more Marvel comics than I have, but it's just like it doesn't make sense. Like that they've gone for this the sacred timeline thing, but it's like how does that affect everybody else? We don't know. Like the fact that
yeah.
they haven't addressed even in the first season what so Captain America being in the past, that's a variant then. Why didn't he get pruned?
Yeah, that also, I mean, there's an infamous thing where like Marcus and McFeely, the screenwriters, and the Rousseau brothers, the directors, have like conflicting
Yeah.
explanations of like, is that the Cap or a variant of Cap? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
At the end, and it's like, oh boy, they don't even know. So, if you and you're building a whole franchise on that moment, and it's like, oh no, 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 guys, you
If
need to
he
have a
gets
plan for
pruned,
this.
I'll actually I think that's amazing.
Well, here's the other thing. To back to my point, like the main character of the show is Asgardian. So, why are there no other species at all
But he's
involved
not
in TVA?
Asgardian. We went over this. He's a Jotunheim.
Okay, adopted a guardian from Asgard, who got in trouble from doing
Adopt
his Asgard
guardian.
shit
He's
on
an
Earth.
adopt guardian.
Adopt a yeah, yeah, that's it. Adoptian. Where was I going with that? Okay, so I will say they in the first 4 episodes they sort of explain like these OB characters, like he's been in this room for like hundreds of years just working. He doesn't even time moves differently, I guess, in the TVA. But there's a lot of talk about the handbook and like that comes
Mhm.
into play. Like they sort of delve into like the origins of the TVA, which sort of may touch on some of the stuff I'm raising. But yeah, I don't know. Either way, I'm interested. It's cool. I just don't know. The problem is I don't care about the multiverse stuff right now because it hasn't been used in an interesting way. It's not exciting because they've ruined it. And I know, we all just know it's a stupid, cheap plot device to write around more celebrity cameos and then eventually reset it and give us a new Iron Man, a new Cap, a new Avengers, all the
A universe
iconic
where the
characters you need to
X-Men
sell.
exist.
Yeah, but that's when it's back to one world, the sacred timeline, Loki would call it, I guess. And then, that's we know in 5 years it's just to set the new status quo where you have all your main Avengers, not a bunch of randoms, but the main Avengers, including a Cap, an Iron Man, a Doctor Strange, because like those are the ones that sell and they need another trilogy movies based on them. But now you have the, like you said, X-Men and the Fantastic Four, and they all have to be on an equal plane. And at the end point of the multiverse is to pick all the actors you like and give them all spots to play. So you can always keep Hugh Jackman as old man Logan, but you have the new Wolverine. Maybe
Played by
Downey's out, but
Taron
you have an Iron
Egerton.
Man. Yeah, that who knows? But we know that's the multiverse endpoint, cheap gimmick. The same thing DC was gonna try to do 5 times and failed, but they're still sort of doing now, I guess, after the Flash and whatever James Gunn's. I don't know. Multiverse sucks, and then just like I think the scrolls and the idea of shape shifting invaders sucks. It's like they haven't told a good story yet, so
I
that's
think
the ultimate problem of it.
even though I didn't regard it as like the best of the Phase 4 films, I think the most success they've had with it, I mean, period, it's Into the Spider-Verse or the Spider-Verse duology, and I think if they're managed to stick that landing, the Spider-Verse trilogy will be the best comic book trilogy of all time, and it won't even be
Well, they have
close.
the benefit of being isolated. It's just
Yeah,
it's just like here's all the Spider-Mans, men's, women, all the spiders.
yeah.
That's it. There's no other, you know what I mean? There's no like Doctor Strange's in there. And if that
No
were
Way
a
Home at
Marvel,
least managed to give us different aspects of the multiverse because you're giving Peter at different standpoints. I'm most
sure.
optimistic about Loki at least because while you were on the show for Quantum Mania, um, the Kang ending at the at the end of season 1 of Loki
Mm,
didn't mean anything because the version we had seen was not this menace, right? And now we've at least seen a version of Kang that should be somebody we're scared of, and the fact that some of those elements, like we've met the Conqueror, right? And so,
Well, if you listen to He Who Remains in his dialogue, that is the end point of time. That is literally the end of time as they
yeah,
construct it. And he refers to himself, he's like, I have been known as the conqueror. So that is possible that one of the end was a King the Conqueror
sure.
millennia ago, which is interesting, I guess.
And I
But
hope they actually address that, because that would actually be really interesting. Where you get,
yeah, I suspect that one has the experiences and knowledge of all of them,
mhm,
or whatever ones he encompassed. Maybe he was Ramatut in the past because he messes with time. Maybe he was a villain against
no,
Fantastic Four in some era, and maybe he was King the Conqueror in some version who did go to some version of the quantum realm. You know what I mean? It's possible he
yeah.
was all of those things. Um, who knows?
Well,
So,
given
and
how
Victor
they've been,
Timely.
yeah, well, and pun intended, I guess. Given how they've been given more time to actually think this through, like one of the things with Bob Iger coming in is like less things, space them out, like because you when you overflood with too much stuff, and the quality clearly seems to have lowered.
That's only a problem because it's one studio making it,
Mhm.
right? If they had a subdivision of Marvel Studios that was like, here's your X Men universe, and they can cross over, of course, but these guys make your X Men stories. That's their focus. They don't have to worry about Shang-Chi 2 and Vision Quest, which may be canceled now, or the Echo show no one asked for. Like, they just make X Men for films, and they can make one every year or two. Then you know you have a focus group concentrating on that
Yeah.
without interfering with the Avengers. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But they can still pick and choose characters, but they're not doing that. They took everything under one umbrella. They want the Sony characters too. They want all under one umbrella, which means you only get 3 or 4 movies a year instead of Sony trying to focus on 1 or 2 movies a year and Fox trying to make 2 or 3 movies a year, which they were going to do pre-acquisition. They were up to 2 or 3 a year, right? That was the plan. We would have had 8, if you include the animated films, we would have had 8 to 12 Marvel films a year, right? But under all houses focused on doing 1 or 2 or 3 each. The problem is they're trying to do all that under one, and now they have too many characters they can't tell stories for. And when they try to do too much at once, they sacrifice the main story. You have a thing like Moon Knight drop, and it has no relevance to anything, and it just becomes forgettable, right? And then, or you know what I mean. And now you have like Echo coming, which is only exists because it has Daredevil and Kingpin in it to set up Born Again, which is not coming out for another 2 years maybe. So it's a very weird position they're in where they finally got all the characters they want and they don't know and are unable to use them in quality storytelling. And now we have to wait a decade between X-Men films, which is insane. That's the one of the most valuable comic book IP ever to exist. So
Well, I
I don't know.
guess Deadpool, technically.
Yes, but
Right.
the X-Men thing is not going to come to 2026, 2027. So yeah, Deadpool will have, whatever. And I suspect you'll see Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and some Fox X-Men characters in Secret Wars, and that'll be their end, their true end.
I have to
Kevin
say,
Feige send
given
off.
being a kid of the early 2000s, seeing Tobey Maguire and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine actually interact, that will be a monumental moment, regardless of the
100%.
quality of the movie for
But
me.
honestly, me too. It's like,
Yeah.
fine, who would have, dreams are coming true.
Yeah.
But that's literally the business model. It's like we have nothing else. We have to do
Yeah.
everything. You just throw everything. It doesn't have to make sense. Jennifer Garner will be there too. Remember
Yeah.
Elektra? That movie sucked. But it's like they're just going to throw you everyone, and
She
I'm
fought a
here
blind
for it.
guy at a children's park. Uh,
Oh yeah, on
uh,
what's that teeter totter
teeter
thing?
totter, teeter totter. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
With her ex-husband.
yeah.
Do I have a segue here?
Well, let's see. Ex-husband. Where does that lead to?
Who's in this movie?
Well,
I
look.
got it. I got it. Gemma Chan's ex-husband in Eternals was no, not Hermes, Icarus. And Gemma Chan is in The Creator.
Okay, I don't understand the thread there, but you're right. Gemma chances.
Talk about the MCU. And she's been two characters. She
uh,
was blue and then she
yes,
wasn't. All
yes.
right, this is very late and I apologize, but again, concussions are not fun. Please protect your head.
Mm.
So Gareth Edwards, all of this kind of weaves together, directed most of Rogue One, um, and has come back with a new sci-fi film. I'll start off again. This is going to be well, it says from the director of on the poster here on the wiki. I went in optimistic for this. I think a new sci-fi property is always, whenever an original idea gets the support like this, it's something that should be I don't even know the sentence. It's been a very long day. it's a positive thing. It's not a recognizable IP, but it is a recognizable director and a star on the rise with John David Washington, who everyone would know from Tenet and Ballers and Black Klansman. I think John David Washington, for the record, would be an incredible John Stewart if the DCU managed to sign him for that. That would be absolutely amazing. I think The Creator is a very well-made film. Ironic that I have Rob here and we were absolutely bashing the volume because the vistas in this film and the visuals are incredible, and the fact that they were in so many actual locations and built sets in real world places is something that becomes less and less frequent in this realm of filmmaking, and I really enjoyed it as a whole. I think if you are a fan of AI inspired anime, you'd see a lot of influences in this film. Not one in particular, but in general, there's a lot of these elements that have kind of been absorbed into the method of storytelling. And I did enjoy it as a whole. I think the film tries to do a lot, and I think it manages to succeed on most of the characters' storylines. I think it's a little bit rushed, particularly with the relationship with John David Washington's character and Gemma Chan. But ultimately, it being almost a road story between the two characters. With what's the little kid's name?
Alfie is what they refer to her
Alfie
as.
and Joshua Taylor's character. Again, I know, especially since becoming a father, I'm a big suck, and the quote unquote daddy on the road uh branch of media has become more and more popular. We talked something like Logan to The Last of Us, now to The Creator. I think this is very good, and if you want something original, you should definitely check this out. I'd be very curious to see how well this does once it hits streaming, because I think it will be one of those films that gets a second life in the streaming model. Who was this made by? Fox? Yeah, that's right. So
20th century, baby.
20th Century Studios. So eventually, when it hits Disney Plus, highly recommend it there. I don't think the conclusion ultimately addresses everything the movie's trying to do, but when you have a great cast like this telling a fun sci-fi adventure, it's something that I look forward to rewatching, because I'm sure there's going to be elements about what it tries to say about what it means to be alive or even human. I look forward to absorbing more of what's there to dive into in the future.
Are we talking spoilers for
Yeah, we're
this,
gonna
or
do full
just
spoilers because we're already running past an hour.
kind of do spoilers now? Or are we doing that in the
Absolutely,
second
yeah.
section?
Spoilers for The
Okay.
Creator because we only have so much time.
Okay, so real quick, this is a movie I think about a lot, which I appreciate. Movies make me do that. And so when I was watching it, it was pretty good. But the second act, I felt like it missed some sequences or was missing some beats when it comes to our protagonist. I felt like the father daughter relationship, the father child relationship, kind of skipped a few beats. It fast tracked ahead. But despite that, and this is a nod to the whole crew and Gareth Edwards' like craftsmanship, all the emotional beats totally work despite that, which is shocking because like that's the complete opposite of everything I said about Ahsoka. Right?
Mhm.
You take a shot of a character reacting to a thing or seeing a thing or being scared of a thing or being excited of a thing or smiling at a thing or making a heroic play to sacrifice yourself to save someone or a thing. Like every moment matters, and that's the secret sauce to Rogue One. That's the secret sauce to Andor. Stakes, big or small, matter. Immersiveness matters. Being captivated by a character you see for 2 seconds matters. Whether that's a robot in this case, a cyborg, whatever, or a human, quote unquote, like every scene matters. So, I'm looking forward to you. You don't have to, but listening to what is Podcast X, where we talk about this, because there we had a big discussion about best movie of the year, and there's a lot of quotes about this movie in particular being the best movie of the year. I would say it's the best crafted movie of the year because just with the $80 million budget and using a $3,800 Sony camera, look at how they capture sequences at night and lighting and dynamic scenes, how they capture like organic versus inorganic material, how they blend CGI characters with practical effects in a scene full of human characters in a real background. Like it's mind blowing what you see on screen here and how many shots per sequence there are. Like what you see in frame is mind blowing. Like it's so dynamic and beautiful. And Gareth Edwards, most of the time, is carrying that camera himself, and it blows away everything we're talking about from Marvel and Star Wars, except for Andor. I'm very happy Gareth Edwards got a shot under the Disney umbrella to do this again, despite being fundamentally replaced by the Gilroys in Rogue One. But you
Mhm.
got to remember, he set up that world. He cast all those characters. He did all those action shots. He set up all those. Sure, Gilroy came in, refined the story, and changed bits, but like the movie is his still. It was just redone, but it was all done in it's all his blueprint still, right? And that's why he was happily out there doing the junket and press for that movie when Rogue One came out, because he damn knew like what he did was special. And despite it getting messed up and the creative control issues, whatever, like he delivered. And there's also a similar story happened with Godzilla. There's, he may not have directed that whole thing, but the things he did do for that, really cool. And all goes back to his OG film, Monsters or whatever. So, which you should see. It's a cool indie film if you haven't seen it. Yeah, look, I also think it's very interesting, especially at this particular time in our world and industry, how they have an AI film where they flip the script and AI is peaceful. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
They're not this all powerful. It's not Skynet. This is not the Matrix. These are not out here killing it. It's the complete opposite. But at the same time, the beginning of the film gives us a reason to understand why Western civilization is so anti AI. And there's a war. They gave a good job establishing motivations and reasoning for stuff. But since we're talking spoilers, there's one line which blows my mind. So I have an issue with the father child relationship halfway through because he kind of skips some beats and there's some weird character stuff in the middle. But I think
Mhm.
overall it's very strong still. But there's a line of dialogue. I guess is it Ken Watanabe's character delivers? Someone says they're wrong. It wasn't AI who caused that nuclear explosion out in
It was a
California. It was
human
like the
coding
human
error.
error, and
Yeah.
then they just throw that away and it's never discussed again. Like that, the entire premise of this universe, this war, hinges on that island and they just throw it away. And I'm like, and then I understand that that's not the point of the movie, but I'm like, what? So like, you know what I mean? Anyways, but it hits you over the head with the idea of like people living with robots in peace, working with and loving the world and nature and the environment against the warmongering invaders, who
Boy,
they did give a reason to. Is a little overbearing, I guess. But I think for the confines of this film and what we get from this genre, I think it totally nails it. So, the more I think about it, I had more complaints the first time around, but the more I think about it, the more I appreciate it because it is so rare. Everything you said is true. Original sci-fi like this, done in this way with this much creative control, like Gareth got to do his own thing, and he delivered something better than and more memorable to me than almost anything else I've seen. Certainly this year in theaters, but maybe in recent years. And I hope he and others get time to do this. You don't need $200 million. This film looks better than the $200 million films I've seen in the last half a decade. It is, and
I
I'm
won't
thinking
tell
about
you
it
where I
more.
have it sitting right now because I have my
Um,
top 10
but
that I've been
yeah,
watching.
so I think it's a must see in theaters. I think you should go see it. This is a beautiful original sci-fi thing. It's very very cool. It's very well cast. There's so many cool little moments and all those little practical details of technology and how people do things or how people interact with a door. And I made this stupid comparison, but like, forgive me, you can interrupt me if I'm going on and on. But like, I was so down on Ahsoka, like technically how that's delivered. But there's a shot when they go to the vault and they're finding out what this thing is that they think the Western civilization sending in agents. They
What
think
the weapon is. Yeah.
New Asia has this weapon or it's technology. It's going to destroy the world, or whatever. And there's a shot where they're in this like cool like underground lab. It's this warehouse looking thing, and they open this vault round door, and all the little details how the door operates and rotates around the lighting, how the shot moves forward, how the characters in frame, and then it flips the camera, and you're inside the vault. You see the second tier doors open. But like how that's lit and the production design and how it's shot and what the actors are doing, like that 15 seconds of nothingness is so much more impressive and interesting than anything in Ahsoka. That is the core problem between whatever 20th century studios agreed to do with Gareth and whatever Lucasfilms, whatever's happening over there. And Marvel Studios, the same thing. So they need to get Gareth up on over there because he knows details, capturing moments, and world building. Someone just give him a better story. And I say better. I actually like the creator, but a better Star Wars or Marvel story. And let him do his thing. It's going to be a better product. You know what I mean? So,
Well, it's
uh,
funny in general. You talk about that with Star Wars, and I think it's certainly a drum that needs to be addressed because the possibilities with something like Andor, uh, being what is possible now, particularly with the resources at hand, is what something I've said forever, which is the reason the original trilogy still in my mind holds up so well is it was created out of compromise. We have seen what George Lucas can do when he can do whatever he wants, and you got that with the prequels. But he worked with different writers. He worked, ironically, with his ex-wife, who was one of the major editors on the first film, and then working with Lawrence Kasdan and Irvin Kershner with Empire, and then having to sort of have a pseudo director with Return of the Jedi. And particularly, one of the things I was most impressed by with the creator was, and it shouldn't be something that affects me whatsoever, but given how we know how much ways or resources are being wasted with these Disney Plus shows, particularly in terms of what they're streaming. You know what? We've been throwing a lot of shade at Disney Plus. I watched all of Citadel on Amazon Prime,
Oh,
or Gray Man, which I mentioned earlier, or whatever the hell The Rock makes for Netflix next. But the fact that this is an $80 million movie, and I'm similar to you, where I walked out of the creator and I thought, you know what, that was pretty good. I had a spot I thought I would put it because as we get closer to the end of the year, I've been generating my top 10, but it's been moving consistently up the more I've thought about it. And you mentioned this earlier about what humanity means. And ultimately, one of the messages that I really liked coming from this film and its approach to AI is, ultimately, AI is a tool similar to everything else. And I mean, knock on wood, we don't have this issue in Canada, and I don't mean to get political, but yes, guns kill people, but it's the people behind those guns that kill people. And similar to the way that like technology is used in this film, like they're in New Asia, we see the synthoids, cyborgs, AI just living in harmony, because base coding for a computer is not evil. We're both using them right now, right? Like if you abuse something, there is, and it is given sentience, there's a possibility that it strikes back with vengeance.
what if, in your example here, the gun could think for itself?
That's true, and ultimately it does come back to who's coding it, right? Like similar things not done
Unless it's true AI, in which
unless it's
case
true.
it doesn't
Yeah,
matter who codes it. It
exactly.
codes itself. Yeah, yeah.
Right? It depends if it has to follow the three laws of robotics, which were first presented to me in iRobot, which I thought it was interesting, and it's a good I think it's something similar that that film also does, which is it makes, and we representation is becoming more and more prevalent in media, and I'm grateful for that as somebody who's biracial. But having another lead character be somebody who's missing limbs, with that being the
Yeah.
case for John David Washington's character and how he views technology from the beginning of the film. And I do agree, his relationship with I keep wanting to call it Alfie does like like maybe miss some spots overall, but ultimately, like how that connects to everything around him and his arc in particular, where how he feels about it, I think that does track all the way through, and it's
Yes.
certainly something that is really interesting, particularly, and I it's hilarious to me that this comes from Disney tech at the end of the day, which is talking about the likenesses of people being brought back and used or donated, and that being an element that is abundantly clear with something that SAG-AFTRA is dealing with the AMT PPPP, whatever the heck they're called.
AMTPT. Yeah.
Yeah,
Jeez. AMPTP.
right? And
Yeah.
what that means, and I think, like as I said earlier, this is a film that I'm really looking forward to watching through again. And it's unfortunate that it was not overly successful, but like so many science fiction movies that have something interesting to say, I think it will find a life post its theatrical release, given how, again, it's something original and it's wildly entertaining. It reminds me of why I like something like what Denny Villeneuve does. And when given the reins of his own property, it's why I'm so much looking forward to Dune Part Two or Chapter Two. Um, what, you look like you had something you wanted to say?
No, I just, as soon as you said Denis, I was thinking the same thing. So you clicked on my head, but the moment I was also at the same time thinking of your like top five from the last. And in my head, I'm like, you have Blade Runner and Dune on there.
I don't.
Oh, okay, okay.
I
Never
don't.
mind.
Yeah, I do not. Uh,
Interesting.
I may have it. Okay, so yeah, I there's only it is a lot happens in the film, and ultimately I don't really want to get into the plot, which typically I would do on my own, because that um when you're one person, you can only fill so much time with just general opinions. But yeah, obviously I know I'm late on this, so apologies. If you have a chance to go see The Creator, I do recommend it. Again, if you are looking for something that is worth seeing on the big screen, this is certainly one of those movies to do that with, given how so many things. And one of the elements that I liked us, and I mentioned this about it being real world locations and vistas and whatnot, is the integration of technology has that tactile element that I know
Hmm.
well, I mean, I've had all three of you now, so all what we appreciate so much in the real world elements, like it feels lived in, and it's in a reality that does not feel super far away but feels tangible to some degree at the same time. So if you don't have anything else to say about it, Rob, we can get into my top 5 if you would like.
Yes, I'm very curious.
All right, Jermaine, you asked this weeks ago. I apologize. I did not number them because I did not want to, because I think it can vary from day to day. So I'm just going to go from bottom to the top in the way I listed them. So I talked about Denis Villeneuve, and so these are science fiction films. If you are curious, Star Wars in 99.9% of people's minds is science fantasy. So there are no Star Wars films in my top 5, or in my favorite science fiction films of the 2000s. So, the first one I have written here is Arrival. I
Oh, good pick. Good pick.
absolutely adore that film. It is a Denis Villeneuve film, of course, that was about humanity's first interaction with extraterrestrials that did not manage to. Uh, Honestly, it's a way headier version of Close Encounters of the Third Kind, which is a Steven Spielberg movie from the late 70s, which I highly recommend you check out. There's a really great story about George Lucas and Steven Spielberg going on vacation after both of their films were released, and they decided to trade the box office success for either of those films. So obviously Steven Spielberg was happier about that. So yes, that is Arrival. I highly recommend you check it out. It's a phenomenal story that again was made on a lower budget, but it's incredible, and it's got one of my favorite performances from Amy Adams in her entire filmography. The next is the reason I had Kofi Outlaw on the podcast, which was Star Trek 2009. This is a
Ah, interesting.
I had never been invested in this franchise. I had seen the TNG movies and bits of the show on and off growing up, but it was never growing up somebody who was more into Star Wars. It had never been a franchise that I was interested in, and the combination of continuing the legacy of the TOS franchise while also doing something new in a reboot, and something we've talked about and I talked about with Kofi, recasting legacy characters and doing it in a new compelling way with a slick Apple shop design. I really, and for me ultimately they never managed to recapture the heights of that first film, even though I do
Really?
enjoy Beyond. Into Darkness is it's just a less interesting Wrath of Khan. It suffers
Yeah.
from the same problems of a lot of other J.J. Abrams films.
Um, I'll say this: that Star Trek franchise, potentially like one of the best ongoing franchises. It would have been up there, like with Mission Impossible, where it's like every single one is great. Even though I have
Mhm.
issues with them, like I think they're just consistently awesome and like
Yeah.
must see films.
I would have been incredible if they managed to do something with 4 that had to do with the time travel element, and like similar what we
Yeah,
talked about with Secret Wars, with like resetting it, the Kelvin timeline, so it never happened.
I think I would fire someone at Paramount Pictures for not fat. Like no matter, I would literally my as an executive, I would have someone in my C suite. Like your job is to make Star Trek happen every 3 years. Like you
Yeah.
are failing if you don't do this. I just blowing my mind that we haven't had a movie since Beyond.
Yeah.
And they have said though when the strikes are over, they're getting fast tracking a fourth one again. But they have the option to do a Tarantino one. They've had 3 different directors attached to do Star Trek 4, and it's like it's crazy right now that they aren't doing something. Even if they only make 400 million at the box office, that's fine. This is legacy material. You have to keep going, and it's high quality right now.
Well, Star
So
Trek Strange New Worlds, I talked with Kofi, is one of my favorite things I've watched this year. Season 2 was
totally, I
incredible.
love that show. Yeah,
It was incredible. And then so there's going to be some IP stuff in here, of course. The next one is Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. It is the reason I was super excited for Matt Reeves taking on the Batman. And I credit Screen Junkies with this Nomer, which is it's the thinking man's blockbuster. I
Mhm.
think it is absolutely criminal that there hasn't been a visual effects award for this trilogy. It blows my mind that that's the case. But Andy Serkis and Toby Kebbell showing what was possible with motion capture, and then the team at Weta. Everybody loves Avatar, and I get it. But for me, this is my Avatar. What these characters are able to do with everybody around them, it's incredible. I love this film. I think I saw it in theaters 4 times. I broke my rule of three, and I saw it 4 times.
This is the second one you're saying, right?
Yes, the second one.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
like
yeah.
War too. War is a phenomenal film, but I loved Dawn. I think it's
It is. Yeah, I'm with you. I like the whole trilogy, but certainly the second one, something special. The second and third one together are like just insane. How smart and prestigious they are for what they
yeah.
are. What you'd think on paper is goofy or like
You
schlocky
look at where
sci-fi,
it
it is
came
not.
from, like
Yeah,
the people in suits, and then the Burton remake. Like this is a universe that should be so stupid, but when you
my,
get the, it's
my
so
dad took me to see
dumb.
the Burton one, the Mark
Yeah.
Wahlberg one. I saw that in
Oof.
theaters, and I was when I was a young, I guess a young teenager at the time. I thought, in my man, I'm like, this is cool. And
Mhm.
then I at the time I had watched all the. I'm coming off of watching all the original movies, even
Sure.
including the terrible like fifth or whatever. You know what I mean? So at the time I liked it, but afterwards I'm like, oh boy, this was out there, huh? But
And doing something that really talked about like what they're so good. They're all on Disney Plus. Yes, because they were purchased in the
yeah, yeah,
merger. The
20th
next film
century, baby.
Yep. The next film I have is Snowpiercer. It is 1984 on a train, starring Captain America himself. I absolutely love this movie. It is also the same director of Parasite. So if
Mm.
I think it is also with the late great John Hurt, who was also a character in Doctor Who, and the film was so good that it eventually wound up being a television series, which I have never watched. Not because I
I
haven't
have
even
not
been a
either.
fan.
I was excited for that, and then that was Scott Derrickson was doing that, and
Mhm.
then he had a creative differences last minute and got pulled out. And when that happened, I'm like, I can't. I never give it a fair shake, even though it has a great cast and people like it.
Yeah,
But I never even watched a single minute of that show.
but no, I love the film. I think it's phenomenal.
Is that your five or is that four so
That's
far?
4. And then this is not, again, this is not, wait a minute, 1, 2, 3. No, you had me confused. I've done 6. So this is not in order. It's just kind of in the way that I listed them. You can do it alphabetical, whatever. And then the last one that is one of my favorite science fiction films of the 2000s is directed by Ryan Johnson and written by Ryan Johnson.
Looper.
Looper. I love Looper. I love its use of time travel, even though you'll never there's always going to be a version that nobody likes, but one that I love where there's cause and effect for time travel. The film has some horror elements. It's got a ridiculous Joseph Gordon-Levitt prosthetic to look like Bruce Willis. But we talked about things with creator, like what it has to say about humanity and where that character starts and ends. It's got a phenomenal performance by Emily Blunt, and we talked about this, like the tactile elements of the tech in it, and the separations with people with powers, with people who don't, and Jeff Daniels being just an absolute garbage human being in it is also quite fun. I love Looper.
I had a feeling you were going to say this one. I'll say this: Looper is one of my favorite Comic Con panels of all time because there's like Ryan Johnson and JGL just like geeking out, and I love the idea of like the tech, the blunderbuss style weapon they decided on, like this
Hmm.
very pirate style,
Yeah.
antiquated like blast, and then like yeah, cool ideas. I tell you what though, when it comes to the time travel thing, what broke my mind in the theater, I understand it. I just don't like it. Is the idea of like you can cut yourself in the past, and the moment it's happening is the moment it's happening in the future. I didn't like that stringing together
Oh, that's
second
fair.
by second. I'm
Hmm.
like, if you cut yourself in the past, in the future, you're already cut. That's how it's not just happening. You know what I mean? It
Yeah,
doesn't. The
but
scar doesn't just create 100 years later or whatever. It was weird to me.
that's fair. I've always viewed it as the element where it's like because all like in the film time is all happening simultaneously, so it's
Totally.
like it would like I it just for me that made sense. I can like there are certainly films where it's addressed in different ways.
It is a creative choice. I understand. I just didn't in my head. I just didn't like it. I feel like I would have done it differently. But it's obviously this is Ryan's choice, and for what it works for what it is. I just didn't like that. Also, every time we see Paul Dano in a Carrot movie, when he's doing that, like, does it always have to be that guy? Like, it's just as soon as you see him on screen, like, oh, I know what's happening, and I hate that. I hate that so much. Isn't he in Cowboys and Aliens as well as a pirate, like cowboy? He's in everything. He's always the same guy. I'm sorry for swearing. I can't handle that. And that's why he did not work as the Riddler. There you go. Bringing it back.
Yeah, he was in Cowboys and Aliens.
Yeah, I know, because you look about guarantees an asshole in that. He's just always the same guy. I don't like it. Sorry.
Did you see Dumb Money?
I've not seen Dumb Money yet. Is he an asshole in that?
I don't know. Rob, you're just giving me more edit points. It's fine.
Sorry. Do you edit out profanity?
Yeah, I do. It's fine.
Oh, okay. No, just kidding. Okay, so what's interesting is, can I tell you something? So
okay.
I kind of, on my head, I was thinking of like sci-fi films in the last 20 years. I think they're all from the last 20 years, and you didn't mention one of them.
Okay.
So I think this is interesting. Again, these are actually not my top 5, so obviously I'm not in order as well. This is what I remember thinking they're cool and they deserve to be seen, because some of these I know were not seen by enough people. Are you ready? Okay. Life. Okay. You seen this movie? Rebecca Ferguson, Jake Gyllenhaal, Ryan Reynolds. The movie that could have been the Venom origin story.
Yeah, the Venom origin story. Yeah, okay. I saw Life.
Freaking love this movie. Mind-blowing theatrical experience. It does crazy things with characters, and the way it ends, it's like insanely well done. Mm-hmm. Again, I filmed very small sets, all in the space station, but like the implications of it, just such a beautifully made, exciting, super thrilling film. Okay.
One of my favorite press junkets, like series of interviews, was Jake Gyllenhaal and Ryan Reynolds.
Great. Yeah.
So good together.
Also, the writers of this, it was Reese and Paul Wernick, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was.
And we kept asking them. I thought we interviewed them for this movie. I remember this. And I was like, ask him about Deadpool and Venom and all this kind of stuff. And I'm pretty sure it was Wernick and
yeah, it was. I'm looking at it right now.
Reese, by the way, big Warzone player.
We should get him on our squad.
I literally been messaging this week about this. Okay, so I don't know if you've seen this one. I think I may have mentioned it to you. Prospect. This is an indie hit. Sophie Thatcher and Pedro Pascal. You like The Mandalorian? This is the real Mandalorian. Very indie film. I think J.D. Plass is in it.
I haven't seen this.
So this was so cool. I remember this is like years ago at Screenrant, just before Pedro blew up, but I loved him because I loved his character in Game of Thrones. And, I liked him and I always wanted him to be Doctor Strange before they cast. I remember doing something about this, and I saw this press release. I thought, this is super cool, this retro style. And the way they did a press release to me is retro style. Then they sent me a thing in the mail, which was like a VHS style tape, because it's very like, it's designed, it looks like an 80s like sci-fi thing. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was so cool. And I actually watched the movie, and I'm like, this is really freaking cool. It's so simple and small. But it's a great little like indie screenplay, I'll say. And nobody's seen it, but people love The Mandalorian, and it infuriates me that no one actually saw this movie, because this is like,
it was only released in Regal theaters, so that's probably why.
I honestly didn't even know it hit theatrical. I thought it was such an indie thing. I thought it was just a direct to VOD sort of situation, but there you go. Good on you, Regal. Partners for Screenrant.com, by the way, in the States. Next one. This is a banger. Children of Men. This is going back like 16 years. This is 2006, I want to say.
2006, it's 6.
Yeah, there you go. This was like,
Alfonso
holy
Cuarón.
Shit. I think this movies like this made me like want to get in this industry. I could not believe this thing. Obviously infamous one shots, but it's super stellar cast, amazingly cool story, beautiful practical sets, great job extras, beautiful cinematography. Yes, it's amazing. I already said it, but it's a beautiful one shot thing. It's a mind blowing movie. You can put it on all your list of best movies of all time. It's gonna be there. It's amazing. Another one. I brought this one up because it stuck out to me. I remember watching it on the first time on a portable DVD player. And I think I got it from the library or something. And I was like, what? And I watched it over and over again. And in university, I told all my friends that we have to watch Sunshine. Danny Boyle.
Yeah.
I friggin' love this movie. It's beautiful. Again, a cool, creepy movie. It's so well done. It's just a movie. It was like when I was in that period of my life where I was in school. I wasn't really like following all the little things like this like I do now. And it blew my mind. But I've referred so many friends to his movie, and I've heard them referring to others. Now I'm like, I'm trying to demand to give me credit, because I didn't know shit about this until I told them. And same thing for Prospect. You're going to give me credit because you're going to like this movie, and the whole world will know.
All
Rob
right.
Keyes is the biggest advertiser of Prospect. Okay, my last one. If when I was doing I was like a judge for some indie film, short film things, whatever here. And people, it was early days of Screaming. People would always be like, "What's your favorite movie of all time?" And I always be like, "It's Master and Commander, or it's Minority Report." Steven
Oh,
Spielberg and Tom Cruise. This movie to me is like one of those few movies I consider absolutely perfect through and through. I thought it was so cool and ahead of its time. One of Tom Cruise's best. And he's got a lot of good movies. This movie was so friggin' awesome, and it was designed initially to be sort of like a total recall sequel of sorts. But yeah, amazing, amazing film. I'm sure everyone's seen it because it was a big blockbuster hit. Spielberg and Cruise working together at their best. So yeah, that's random five. I in my head, I was thinking when you said sci-fi, I was like Interstellar, Ex Machina, but I think these five really stand out to me even more. So
those
there
are
you go.
phenomenal films. It was very difficult for me. It was
There's so
kind of
many,
like,
which is
yeah,
good.
yeah, it's true. I labeled this list Rob's must see sci-fi films from the 2000s.
Yeah, off the top of his head, because I bet that I'm actually like, if I actually like started looking at lists, I bet I'd see like five I completely just didn't think about. I'm like,
It's
oh god.
it made it like even just having it be in 23 years, it was incredibly difficult. So there you go, Jermaine. You got 10 science fiction films you probably haven't seen. Uh
12 if you count Interstellar and Ex
well,
Machina.
yeah, well, he saw those, I feel like.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, true, true.
So if you wanted to send in a question and have it addressed, you can tweet at me directly at Kyle_Naranya or I'm on Threads, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Hive, Vero personally. I'm not on
Blue
Blue.
Sky.
No,
Oh,
I haven't been invited yet. I'm not
oh, I could probably
popular.
get you that. I don't
Perfect.
use it, but
There we go. So of course, and Rob you can find at Rob_Keys.
hmm
Rob does Screen Rant, Collider,
yeah, Screamrant's my
CBR.
baby, but
Yeah,
I'm in the same portfolio as some other major banger entertainment sites, including Collider, CBR, and MovieWeb.
there we go. So next, I don't know what I'm doing. Is anything even coming out? I should have looked. What is it? October.
Yeah, Taylor Swift Eras Tour in theater.
I have no idea
What?
what's. I
Not hyped
might
for
just
that?
cover a
T
TV.
Swift.
Nothing. Everything moved. I don't think there's anything. You know what? I'll probably wind up doing just what I've been watching. So I'll cover
Gen V.
Gen V. I'm up to date on Gen V. If you enjoy The Boys, I highly recommend you check that out. And then I'll probably talk about Castlevania Nocturne. And you know what?
Ah.
I'll probably talk about the last season canonically of Power Rangers Cosmic Fury. So that'll probably be on next week's episode. Loki, I will not be doing week to week because I don't want to. So at some point, maybe I'll cover the whole season. Rob may be back for that. Who knows? Rob, again, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I know we always run a little later when I'm on here, but it's good to chat with you about the fun stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, and sometimes it's. I was gonna say the Continental, but I'm trying to think of something I've watched that's really bad recently. I don't know.
Does that wrap up nicely, the Continental?
I
Or
don't
does
know. I
it
haven't seen
end?
episode 3, so I don't know.
Oh, I forgot you said that. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet.
I have
Okay.
not seen episode 3 yet. I'm trying to think of um well, Rob's been doing all his sci-fi recommendations on this episode. Rob, watch Warrior. Season 3 wrapped up like a month ago.
I've seen
It's
season one and I really enjoyed it, so I will. That's on my
yeah.
list of
There's
stuff.
been no
Right now, I'm
announcement for
watching.
season 4 and I'm terrified. 'Cause
Yeah, with
it's
William Mascot. I hope they do it. It's good. I was
well,
very happy we got to do like ton of interviews for season 3 before this all went crazy. So
it's the problem with it ultimately is it's a Warner Discovery production and they don't know what they're doing. But yeah, so that will be next week's episode. Yeah, will be a bunch of kind of mini reviews as to what I've been watching, and if there's something you're watching that maybe I haven't talked about yet, I'll throw it in that episode. And of course, don't forget to leave any review, or you can leave a review on any of your podcast platforms. For fun, on the Spotify episode, I always put in a question. Last week's episode, just for fun, was who is your favorite Batman? Because I did a re-review of Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which has been released on 4K, where I listed my favorite or my top 10 Batman the Animated Series episodes. So that was fun to do. So you can see that on last week's episode, and you can look forward to next week's episode. I am fully recovered from my concussion, so I'm going to try to have these episodes up every single Monday. You can look for them there and follow me on the socials for the funny video shenanigans. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast, and I will see you.